My name is Rohini, and I'm 32 years old. I've always been a strong and independent person, but my life took a drastic turn a few years ago when I was diagnosed with a chronic illness. I had to undergo a series of treatments and surgeries, and I was forced to rely on others for care and support. At first, it was tough for me to accept help from others. I'm used to taking care of myself, but I had no choice. That's when I met her, my nurse. She was kind, caring, and compassionate. I felt like I could trust her with my life, and I did. I remember the first time I met her, she smiled and held my hand. She told me everything would be okay, and I believed her. I was vulnerable, scared, and alone. But she made me feel like I was in good hands. As the days went by, I grew to trust her more and more. She would come to my house, take care of my medication, and even cook for me. I felt like she genuinely cared about me, and I opened up to her. I shared my fears, my dreams, and my struggles with her. But looking back, I realized that I was blinded by my trust in her. I didn't see the signs, the red flags that would later change everything. I didn't know that my trust would be exploited and my vulnerability would be used against me. I remember the feeling of being in her care, feeling safe and protected. But that feeling was short-lived. The truth is, I was living in a world of my own, a world where I thought I could trust anyone who claimed to care for me. My health struggles were real, and I was desperate for help. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew I needed someone to trust. And that's when she came into my life. As I look back, I realized that I was so focused on my health that I didn't see the danger lurking in plain sight. I didn't see the person who would betray me, who would exploit my trust and vulnerability. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning. My journey began with a diagnosis that changed everything. I was diagnosed with a chronic illness that required ongoing treatment and care. At first, it was overwhelming. I didn't know how to cope with the news, but I knew I had to be strong. I had to fight. And that's when I met her, my nurse. She was my lifeline, my rock, my everything. Or so I thought. I remember the first time she came to my house. She was punctual, professional, and caring. She took care of my medication, monitored my vitals, and even helped me with my physical therapy. I felt like I was in good hands. But as time went on, I started to notice things that didn't add up. Little things, small things, but things that would later become significant. I'm not sure what made me trust her so much, but I did. Maybe it was her smile, her kindness, or her compassion. Whatever it was, it worked. I trusted her with my life. And that's where my story begins. A story of trust, betrayal, and exploitation. A story that would change my life forever. I'd been searching for the right nurse for weeks. My health was deteriorating, and I desperately needed someone trustworthy to care for me. That's when my doctor recommended Nurse Rachel. She had years of experience and a reputation for being compassionate. I was skeptical at first, but my doctor assured me she was the best. The doorbell rang, and I heard my mom answer it. A warm, gentle voice filled the hallway. "Hello, I'm Rachel, the nurse. I'm here to care for Rohini." My mom showed her in, and Rachel walked into my room with a bright smile. "Hi, Rohini. I'm Nurse Rachel. I'll be taking care of you." She had a soothing presence, and I felt a sense of relief. Rachel began by checking my medical files and asking me questions about my condition. She was thorough and meticulous, making sure she understood my needs. I was impressed by her professionalism. As she worked, she chatted with me, asking about my interests and hobbies. I found myself opening up to her, sharing stories about my favorite books and movies. After finishing her assessment, Rachel explained her plan for my care. She would visit me 3 times a week, administering medication, monitoring my vitals, and helping me with physical therapy. I felt a sense of hope, knowing I had someone dedicated to helping me recover. As the days went by, Rachel became a constant presence in my life. She was punctual, efficient, and caring. I grew to trust her, and we developed a routine. Rachel would arrive, and we'd chat about our lives. She'd share stories about her family, and I'd share mine. It was nice to have someone to talk to. Rachel's care went beyond just my physical health. She'd often ask about my mental state, making sure I was coping with my condition. She'd offer words of encouragement, reminding me that I was strong and capable. Her support gave me the motivation to keep pushing forward. One day, as Rachel was preparing to leave, she said, "Rohini, I've been thinking. We should celebrate your progress. Maybe next week we can bake some cookies together?" I smiled, feeling a sense of excitement. It was small moments like these that made me appreciate Rachel's care. She wasn't just a nurse, she was a friend. As the weeks turned into months, Rachel continued to care for me. She was a steady presence, always there to support me. I began to feel like I could rely on her completely. But little did I know, my trust in Rachel would soon be tested in ways I never imagined. Rachel's visits became more frequent, and she'd often stay longer than scheduled, checking in on me and making sure I was comfortable. I appreciated her dedication, and my mom did too. We both felt grateful to have Rachel in our lives. One afternoon, Rachel arrived earlier than usual. "Rohini, I brought some books I think you might like," she said, holding up a bag filled with novels. "I thought we could discuss them next time I visit." I was touched by her thoughtfulness. Rachel was more than just a nurse. She was someone who genuinely cared. As I looked at Rachel, I realized that I had found someone truly special. Her kindness, compassion, and dedication had made a significant difference in my life. I felt lucky to have her by my side, caring for me. But as time would tell, appearances can be deceiving. Rachel's visits continued, and I grew to trust her completely. She'd often make small comments that seemed harmless, but would leave me feeling slightly off balance. One day, while administering my medication, she said, "You're doing so well, but you need to take care of yourself. You're lucky to have me, you know?" The comment was brief, but it made me wonder if I was truly capable of caring for myself. As time passed, Rachel started making decisions for me, insisting it was for my own good. She'd schedule appointments without consulting me, saying, "Don't worry, I'll handle it." At first, I let her, thinking she knew best, but slowly, I began to feel like I was losing control over my life. One afternoon, Rachel arrived late, apologizing profusely. She explained that she'd gotten held up at another patient's house, someone who needed her more than I did. "You understand, don't you?" she asked, her voice laced with guilt. I nodded, feeling a twinge of doubt about my own needs. Rachel would often compare me to her other patients, saying things like, "That lady I visited yesterday was so much worse off than you. You should be grateful for what you have." These comments made me feel small, like I wasn't allowed to complain about anything. During our sessions, Rachel would sometimes shift the focus from my health to her own problems. She'd talk about her family issues or financial struggles, expecting me to offer advice or sympathy. I felt like I was being pulled into her world, and it was draining. As the weeks went by, I started to feel trapped in my own home. Rachel would drop by unannounced, saying she was just checking in. I'd try to prepare myself for her visits, but they'd become increasingly unpredictable. She'd question me about my daily routine, my diet, my sleep patterns. It was as if she was monitoring me, not just caring for me. One day, Rachel mentioned that she might need to bring some medical equipment to my house, just in case. "It's better to be safe than sorry," she said. I hesitated, unsure if it was necessary, but she assured me it was standard procedure. As she left, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing my autonomy, bit by bit. Rachel's words were always laced with a gentle, caring tone, but her actions were slowly eroding my sense of self. I began to wonder if I was just a patient to her, or if she truly cared about my well-being. The line between care and control was blurring, and I wasn't sure how to react. As the days turned into weeks, Rachel's visits became more frequent and her behavior more erratic. She'd show up at odd hours, claiming she was just checking in on me. I'd feel a mix of emotions, gratitude for her care, but also frustration at her intrusion into my life. I started to question whether I was truly in control of my own life. Rachel would often make light of my concerns, dismissing them with a wave of her hand. "You're just being paranoid," she'd say. "I'm here to help." Her words would calm me momentarily, but the doubts would linger. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but something about Rachel's behavior didn't feel right. It was as if she was playing a game, and I was just a pawn. But I couldn't quite see the board or understand the rules. All I knew was that I felt trapped, and I didn't know how to escape. The visits continued, each one a subtle dance between care and control. Rachel would smile and reassure me, but her actions would speak louder than her words. I felt like I was walking on eggshells, never knowing what would trigger her next move. As I looked back, I realized that the signs had been there all along. Rachel's comments, her actions, her behavior, they all pointed to a deeper issue. But I'd been too blinded by my trust in her to see it. Now, I wasn't so sure. Was Rachel truly looking out for me, or was she playing a more sinister game? The question lingered in my mind, refusing to be silenced. Rachel's visits became more frequent, but her care started to take a dark turn. She'd show up late, sometimes not show up at all, and when she did, she'd be short-tempered. I'd ask her to help me with simple tasks, but she'd snap at me, telling me I was too demanding. My mom would try to intervene, but Rachel would brush it off, saying she was just tired. One day, Rachel arrived looking frazzled. "I'm stressed, Rohini. You're not the only patient I have, you know." She began to neglect my medication, forgetting to administer it on time or skipping doses altogether. I'd remind her, and she'd get defensive, saying she knew what she was doing. As time went on, Rachel started making unreasonable demands. She'd ask me to do things that were impossible for someone in my condition, like fetching her water or answering phone calls. When I'd struggle to comply, she'd scold me, saying I wasn't trying hard enough. Rachel's exploitation began to take a financial toll. She'd ask me for money, claiming it was for medical supplies or equipment. My mom would hand over the cash, trusting Rachel's judgment. But I started to suspect something was off when Rachel would show up with expensive clothes and jewelry. "Rachel, I need my medication," I said one day. "Oh, don't worry about it. You'll be fine," she replied dismissively. "But Rachel, I need it to get better. Look, Rohini, I'm doing my best here. Just be patient, okay?" Her tone was cold, her words laced with annoyance. I felt a knot in my stomach. Something wasn't right. Rachel's behavior had changed so drastically, and I didn't know why. I started to feel trapped, like I was at her mercy. As the days went by, Rachel's abuse escalated. She'd yell at me for no reason, belittle me in front of my mom, and make me feel worthless. I began to doubt my own abilities, wondering if I was indeed as helpless as Rachel made me out to be. One afternoon, Rachel arrived late, looking agitated. "Rohini, I need money for your medical bills," she said, her voice firm. "But Rachel, my mom already gave you money last week," I replied, feeling a surge of fear. "That was for something else. This is for your treatment. Now give me the money," she demanded, her eyes cold. I hesitated, unsure of what to do. Rachel's words were laced with an underlying threat, and I felt a chill run down my spine. I didn't know what Rachel was capable of, but I knew I had to be careful. For now, I'd have to comply. But I was determined to find a way out of this nightmare. I couldn't take it anymore. Rachel's abuse and exploitation had taken a toll on me. I felt like I was walking on eggshells, never knowing when she'd lash out next. My mom tried to be supportive, but even she seemed to be losing patience with me. I'd try to explain what was happening, but she'd just tell me to be grateful for Rachel's care. One day, I reached my breaking point. Rachel had been particularly cruel, yelling at me for not taking my medication on time. I'd tried to defend myself, but she just got angrier. As she left, I felt like I'd hit rock bottom. I couldn't take care of myself, and I couldn't trust anyone else to do it for me. I broke down in tears, sobbing uncontrollably. My mom tried to comfort me, but I pushed her away. I felt like I was all alone, like no one understood what I was going through. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. All I could do was lie in bed and think about how I'd ended up in this situation. As the days went by, my physical health began to deteriorate. My mom tried to intervene, but Rachel was always one step ahead. She'd tell my mom that I was just being difficult, that I needed to be more compliant. My mom would believe her, and I'd be left feeling frustrated and helpless. I started to wonder if I'd made a mistake by trusting Rachel. Maybe I should have seen the signs earlier. Maybe I should have stood up for myself. But it was too late now. Rachel had taken control of my life, and I didn't know how to get it back. I felt like I was losing myself, like I was disappearing bit by bit. I couldn't make decisions. I couldn't take care of myself. Rachel had taken over everything, and I was just a puppet on strings. I didn't know how much longer I could keep going like this. As I lay in bed, I thought about my life before Rachel. I thought about the things I used to enjoy, the things that made me happy. I realized that I'd lost touch with who I was, what I wanted. Rachel had taken that away from me, and I didn't know how to get it back. I knew I needed to do something, but I didn't know what. I felt trapped, like there was no way out. Rachel had me right where she wanted me, and I didn't know how to escape. All I could do was lie there, feeling helpless and alone, wondering what the future held. The days blended together, each one a blur of pain and suffering. I felt like I was drowning, like I was being pulled under by a strong current. I didn't know how to swim against the tide, didn't know how to save myself. All I could do was go through the motions, hoping that someday things would get better. But deep down, I knew they wouldn't. Not unless I did something to change my situation. The problem was, I didn't know what that something was. I felt stuck, trapped in a cycle of abuse and exploitation, and I didn't know how to break free. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't keep living like this, trapped in a cycle of abuse and exploitation. I started to think about my options, about what I could do to take back control of my life. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was determined to try. I began to document everything, writing down every incident of abuse and exploitation. I kept a record of the dates, times, and details of what had happened. I knew it would be hard to prove, but I had to try. I also started to look for ways to contact authorities or support groups who could help me. One day, I managed to sneak onto my mom's phone and search for local organizations that could assist me. I found a number for a helpline and made a call, hoping someone would answer. When a kind voice picked up, I explained my situation, trying to be as detailed as possible. The person on the other end listened attentively and promised to send someone to help me. I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, I could get out of this situation. I waited anxiously for what felt like an eternity, but finally there was a knock on the door. It was a social worker from the organization I'd contacted. She introduced herself and explained that she was there to help me. I poured out my heart to her, telling her everything that had happened. She listened with a sympathetic ear, taking notes and asking questions. When I finished, she promised to help me get out of this situation and find a new caregiver. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. For the first time in months, I felt like I might actually be able to escape. The social worker helped me make a plan to confront Rachel and get her out of my life for good. We went over the documents I'd kept, and she assured me that we had enough evidence to take to the authorities. I felt a sense of determination wash over me. I was going to take back my life, no matter what it took. As the social worker left, I felt a sense of resolve. I was going to fight back, and I was going to win. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to do whatever it took to take back control of my life. I was done being a victim. I was ready to be a survivor. I took a deep breath and steeled myself for what was to come. I knew that confronting Rachel wouldn't be easy, but I was ready. I was ready to face her, to stand up for myself, and to take back my life. I was done being controlled and manipulated. It was time for me to take charge. I started to make preparations for the confrontation, going over what I would say and how I would say it. I practiced my words, my tone, and my body language. I was determined to be strong, to be firm, and to be clear. I was going to make sure Rachel knew that I wouldn't be treated like this anymore. As I prepared, I felt a sense of empowerment growing inside me. I was taking control of my life, and I was going to make sure that no one ever took advantage of me again. I was ready to face Rachel, to face the authorities, and to face the world. I was ready to take back my life, and I was going to do it with courage and determination. I'd had enough. Rachel's abuse and exploitation had been going on for too long. I knew I had to take action, but I didn't know where to start. I felt trapped, like I was stuck in a never-ending nightmare. But something inside me snapped. I realized that I didn't have to take this anymore. I didn't have to be a victim. I thought about all the times Rachel had belittled me, all the times she'd taken advantage of me. I thought about the way she'd manipulated my mom, the way she'd played on her sympathies. I thought about the way she'd controlled me, the way she'd made me feel like I was nothing without her. And I knew that I couldn't take it anymore. I picked up the phone and dialed the number of the social worker I'd spoken to earlier. When she answered, I told her that I'd had enough. I told her that I wanted to take action, that I wanted to report Rachel and get her out of my life for good. The social worker listened attentively, asking questions and making notes. She told me that she would send someone over to help me, that we would work together to build a case against Rachel. I felt a sense of relief wash over me. I knew that I wasn't alone, that there were people who cared about me and wanted to help. As I waited for the social worker to arrive, I felt a sense of determination growing inside me. I knew that I was taking a risk, that confronting Rachel wouldn't be easy, but I was ready. I was ready to stand up for myself, to fight for my rights. I was ready to take back my life. When the social worker arrived, she brought a sense of calm and authority with her. She explained the process of reporting Rachel, of building a case against her. She told me that we would need to gather evidence, to document every incident of abuse and exploitation. I nodded, determination burning inside me. I was ready to do whatever it took. Together, the social worker and I started to gather evidence. We went through my records, documenting every incident of abuse and exploitation. We took photos of the bruises on my body, of the medication that Rachel had neglected to give me. We wrote down every detail, every conversation, every incident. As we worked, I felt a sense of empowerment growing inside me. I was taking control of my life, and I was going to make sure that Rachel paid for what she'd done. I was going to make sure that she never hurt anyone else again. The social worker smiled at me, her eyes filled with compassion. "You're doing the right thing," she said. "You're taking back your life, and you're standing up for yourself. That takes a lot of courage." I nodded, feeling a sense of pride and determination. I knew that I was doing the right thing. I was taking a stand against abuse and exploitation, and I was going to fight for my rights. I was going to fight for my life. As the social worker left, I felt a sense of resolve. I was going to see this through, no matter what it took. I was going to make sure that Rachel was held accountable for her actions. I was going to take back my life, and I was going to start a new chapter. I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of determination and strength. I was ready to face whatever came next, to take on whatever challenges lay ahead. I was ready to take back my life, and I was going to do it with courage and conviction. I sat down with the social worker to finalize my plan. We discussed the best course of action, weighing the pros and cons of each option. The social worker explained that we could report Rachel to the authorities, but it would be a lengthy process. Alternatively, we could confront her directly, but that might put me in danger. I want to report her, I said firmly. I want her to face consequences for what she's done. The social worker nodded in agreement. That's a good decision. We'll need to gather all the evidence we can and build a strong case against her. We spent the next few hours gathering documents, photos, and witness statements. The social worker helped me organize everything, making sure we had a solid foundation for our case. As we worked, I couldn't help but think about the confrontation that was to come. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was determined to see it through. What's the next step? I asked the social worker. We'll need to go to the police station and file a report, she replied. I'll accompany you and make sure everything goes smoothly. I nodded, feeling a sense of resolve. I was ready to face Rachel and take back control of my life. The day of the confrontation arrived, and I felt a mix of nerves and determination. The social worker and I went to the police station, where we met with a detective who specialized in cases like mine. He listened attentively as I recounted everything that had happened, taking detailed notes and asking questions. After I finished, the detective assured me that they would take my case seriously and do everything they could to bring Rachel to justice. I felt a sense of relief wash over me, knowing that I was one step closer to freedom. The detective explained that they would need to investigate further, gathering more evidence and interviewing witnesses. I nodded, understanding that it would take time. As we left the police station, the social worker turned to me and smiled. "You're doing great," she said. "You're taking control of your life, and you're standing up for yourself. That takes a lot of courage." I smiled back, feeling a sense of pride and determination. I knew that I still had a long way to go, but I was ready for whatever came next. I was ready to face Rachel and take back my life. The social worker and I made a plan to stay in touch, to keep each other updated on any developments in the case. I knew that I could count on her to support me every step of the way. With the plan in motion, I felt a sense of hope that I hadn't felt in a long time. I knew that I would face challenges and obstacles, but I was ready to overcome them. I was ready to take back my life and start anew. I stood outside Rachel's office, my heart pounding in my chest. I had been preparing for this moment for what felt like an eternity. I took a deep breath, mentally rehearsing the words I would say. The social worker stood beside me, her presence a reassuring calm in the midst of chaos. We entered the office, and Rachel looked up from her desk, a look of surprise on her face. "Rohini, what brings you here?" she asked, her voice dripping with false concern. I walked straight to her desk, my eyes locked on hers. "Rachel, we need to talk," I said, my voice firm. The social worker stood beside me, her eyes fixed on Rachel. "Yes, Rachel. We need to discuss your treatment of Rohini," she added. Rachel's expression changed, a hint of defensiveness creeping into her eyes. "What's going on here?" she asked, her voice rising. "You know exactly what's going on," I said, my voice growing stronger. "You've been abusing me, exploiting me, and manipulating me. And it's going to stop." Rachel's face turned red with anger, but she tried to maintain her composure. "That's not true," she said. "I'm just trying to help you, Rohini." The social worker stepped forward, her voice calm and authoritative. "Rachel, we have evidence of your abuse and exploitation. We know about the medication you withheld, the lies you told, and the financial exploitation. It's over." Rachel's face fell, her eyes darting back and forth between us. She knew she was caught. "You can't prove anything," she spat, but her voice lacked conviction. I pulled out the folder filled with documents and evidence. "We have everything we need," I said, my voice firm. "We're going to the authorities, and you're going to face the consequences of your actions." The social worker nodded in agreement. "It's time for you to take responsibility for your actions, Rachel. You're not going to get away with this." Rachel's face contorted with rage, but she knew she was beaten. She slumped back in her chair, her eyes downcast. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone," she muttered. I looked at her, a mix of anger and sadness in my heart. "You didn't mean to hurt anyone?" I repeated. "You've caused me so much pain and suffering. You've taken advantage of my vulnerability and exploited me for your own gain." The social worker placed a hand on my shoulder. "It's time to take action, Rohini," she said gently. I nodded, feeling a sense of resolve. "I'm going to make sure you pay for what you've done," I said, my voice firm. The social worker and I turned to leave, but not before I looked back at Rachel. "You're going to face the consequences of your actions," I said, my voice cold. As we walked out of the office, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. I had taken the first step towards healing and justice. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to face whatever came next. I was ready to take back my life. I walked out of Rachel's office, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. The social worker and I went to the police station, where we filed a formal complaint against Rachel. The officer taking our statement listened attentively, asking questions and making notes. After we finished, the officer assured us that they would take immediate action. "We'll investigate and gather evidence," he said. "We'll do everything we can to ensure justice is served." The social worker and I nodded, feeling a sense of validation. We knew it wouldn't be easy, but we were determined to see it through. The days that followed were a blur of activity. The police investigation was underway, and Rachel's actions were being scrutinized. I was interviewed by detectives, and I recounted every detail of my time with Rachel. As the news of Rachel's abuse and exploitation spread, the hospital took action. Rachel's license was suspended, and she was banned from practicing medicine. The hospital administration apologized for their failure to supervise her and promised to implement new protocols to prevent similar incidents in the future. I received calls from other patients who had also been abused by Rachel. They thanked me for speaking out and told me that they were seeking justice as well. I felt a sense of solidarity with them, and together, we vowed to make sure Rachel was held accountable. The investigation continued, and the evidence against Rachel mounted. The police gathered testimony from multiple witnesses, and the case against her grew stronger. As the weeks passed, I began to rebuild my life. I started seeing a new doctor, one who was kind and compassionate. I slowly regained my strength and started to rediscover the things I loved. The social worker checked in on me regularly, offering support and guidance. "You're doing great," she said. "You're taking back control of your life, and that's something to be proud of." I smiled, feeling a sense of gratitude towards her. "I couldn't have done it without you," I said. The day of Rachel's trial arrived, and I prepared myself for what was to come. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was determined to face her and seek justice. As I walked into the courtroom, I saw Rachel sitting in the defendant's chair. She looked different, her confident demeanor gone. She looked defeated, and for a moment, I felt a pang of sadness. But as I took the stand and recounted my story, my sadness turned to anger. I told the court about the abuse, the exploitation, and the manipulation. I told them about the pain and suffering Rachel had caused me. The prosecutor questioned me, and I answered every question honestly. Rachel's lawyer tried to discredit me, but I stood firm. After I finished testifying, the prosecutor rested the case. The judge deliberated and then delivered the verdict. Rachel was found guilty of abuse and exploitation, and she was sentenced to prison. I felt a sense of closure, knowing that justice had been served. I knew it wouldn't erase the pain, but it was a step towards healing. As I left the courtroom, I felt a sense of pride and accomplishment. I had taken back control of my life, and I had stood up for myself. I knew it wouldn't be easy to move on, but I was ready to face whatever came next. I stood outside the courtroom, waiting for the verdict. The social worker stood beside me, her hand on my shoulder. "You did great on the stand," she said. "You're strong and brave." I nodded, feeling a sense of determination. I knew I had done everything I could to prove Rachel's guilt. The doors to the courtroom opened and we walked in. The judge entered, and the room fell silent. After careful consideration, the court finds the defendant, Rachel, guilty of abuse and exploitation, the judge said. I felt a surge of relief and satisfaction. The social worker squeezed my shoulder, a small smile on her face. The judge continued. The defendant is hereby sentenced to 5 years in prison and will be required to pay restitution to the victims. I nodded, feeling a sense of closure. Rachel would face the consequences of her actions, and I could finally start to heal. The prosecutor smiled, nodding in satisfaction. "This is a victory for justice," she said. The social worker and I walked out of the courtroom into the bright sunlight. "It's over," she said. "You can finally start to move on." I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of freedom. "I'm ready," I said. "I'm ready to start my life again." The social worker and I walked to her car, parked outside the courthouse. "What's next?" I asked. "We'll work on getting you the compensation you're entitled to," she said, "and we'll help you find a new doctor and get the medical care you need." I nodded, feeling a sense of gratitude towards her. "Thank you," I said. "Thank you for believing me and standing by me." The social worker smiled. "You're welcome," she said. "You deserve justice and care. You're not alone." I smiled back, feeling a sense of hope. I knew it wouldn't be easy to rebuild my life, but I was ready to try. I was ready to face the future, knowing that I had taken back control of my life. As we drove away from the courthouse, I looked out the window, watching the city go by. I knew I still had a long way to go, but I was ready. I was ready to heal, to grow, and to start anew. I sat in my new apartment, surrounded by familiar objects and new beginnings. The social worker had helped me get settled, and I was finally starting to feel like myself again. I thought back to the journey that had brought me here, to the moment when I realized I was trapped in a toxic relationship with Rachel. I remembered the fear, the uncertainty, and the desperation. I remembered the social worker's words of encouragement, the police investigation, and the trial. I thought about Rachel's conviction and the sense of closure I had felt. But most of all, I thought about the growth. I had grown stronger, more confident, and more determined. I had learned to stand up for myself, to advocate for my needs, and to trust my instincts. The social worker had told me that I was brave, that I had shown remarkable resilience. I didn't feel brave, but I knew I had done what I had to do. I had fought for my life, for my dignity, and for my rights. As I looked around my new apartment, I felt a sense of pride. I had created a new life for myself, one that was free from abuse and exploitation. I had taken back control, and I was determined to make the most of it. I thought about the future, about the possibilities and opportunities that lay ahead. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was ready. I was ready to face challenges, to learn from mistakes, and to grow. The phone rang, breaking the silence. It was the social worker, checking in on me. "How are you doing?" she asked. "I'm doing well," I said. "I'm settling in, and I'm feeling more confident every day." "That's great to hear," she said. "You deserve it. You're strong, capable, and deserving of happiness." I smiled, feeling a sense of gratitude towards her. "Thank you," I said. "Thank you for believing me, for supporting me, and for helping me." "You're welcome," she said. "I'll always be here for you. Take care of yourself, and don't hesitate to reach out if you need anything." I hung up the phone, feeling a sense of peace. I knew I would always carry the scars of my past with me, but I also knew that I was stronger than those scars. I was a survivor, and I was ready to start my new life. I took a deep breath, feeling the cool air fill my lungs. I was ready to face the future, to take on new challenges, and to live my life on my own terms. I was ready to be me, without fear or apology. I was ready to live. This is the end of my story. Thank you for watching, and if you like this kind of content, kindly leave us a like, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Thank you.